everywhere in any area. It doesn't matter if there are people or not. In the markets, in schools, the shelling is everywhere. We are also afraid of the rain. We are not prepared for winter.
وكمان احنا برضك من المطر يعني متخوفين جدا كثير من المطر لانه احنا مش مهيئين نفسنا للمطر.
Multiple attempts at peace negotiations have failed. Israel says the war will only end with the destruction of Hamas and the return of all remaining Israeli hostages taken by Hamas during the attack it led on Israel on October the 7th, 1 year ago. For Nadal Hamdouna, Amjad Tantash and Enas Tantash in southern Gaza Strip, Dorian Jones, VOA News.
Thousands of Israelis, most of them soldiers, have been wounded in fighting over the past year and face a long rehabilitation. Linda Gradstein has more from Jerusalem. Please note this story contains simulated images of war injuries that some may find disturbing.
Yonti Bahat's Extreme Simulations company trains Israeli security forces to respond to military and terrorist attacks using mannequins and rubber body parts. But no simulation could have prepared Bahat, a 48-year-old Israeli reservist paratrooper, for being critically wounded in Gaza in the war against Hamas. He was hospitalized for 6 months after his shoulder and lower leg were shattered. Now he has begun the long process of physical and psychological rehabilitation at Beit HaLochem, the soldier's house.
A very important part of the rehabilitation is the hydrotherapy. There are many things that water help to start doing or to do better and so on. And it's also good for the mind.
The Israeli army says that more than 10,700 soldiers have been wounded since the war with Hamas in Gaza began almost a year ago. 1/3 of those are suffering from trauma, while more than 1/3 have damage to their limbs, including nearly 70 amputees. The head of the Tzahal Disabled Veterans Organization, Idan Kleiman, was himself paralyzed from the chest down when he was shot fighting in Gaza in 1992. He says that improved medical services on the battlefield, like combat paramedics performing emergency surgeries under fire, have saved many lives compared to previous wars. But many soldiers who survived suffered very serious injuries. Kleiman says that budgets for expanded rehabilitation facilities have increased by 30%.
We saw people lose two hands and one leg, 2 legs and 1 hand, and still keep living and coming to the hospital and surviving these injuries. The people who were paralyzed and the blind and the people that had injuries and very, very hard had injuries. So the challenging, the doctors challenging, all our facilities and all our staff challenging people that so badly wounded that we didn't even recognize before.
Israel is in the forefront internationally at treating wounded soldiers using high tech to make prostheses for amputees and for innovative rehabilitation techniques using virtual reality. Intensive rehabilitation therapy, both physical and psychological, is essential for wounded combat engineer Erez Amsalem, who almost lost his leg in a suicide bomb attack in Gaza. He says that he and thousands of other disabled soldiers will be part of a new reality in Israel.
לראות ברחוב חבר'ה צעירים בלי ידיים, חבר'ה צעירים בלי רגליים.
To see in the street young people without arms or legs, young people with canes or wheelchairs. It's sad that this will appear normal.
ואני חושב שזה
I think this is one of the only things that the entire Israeli society can agree about. There are no disputes about the issue of disabled veterans.
אין שום מחלוקות בעניין של נכי צה"ל.
The past year of war in Gaza has led to a sharp increase in the number of young Israeli soldiers wounded, both physically and emotionally. The challenge for the country, with its population of just under 10 million, will be how to first rehabilitate them and then integrate them into Israeli society. Linda Gradstein, VOA News, Jerusalem.
For more perspective on the Israel-Hamas war, I'm joined live from Tel Aviv, Israel, by journalist Ricky Rose. And Ricky, tell us more on how Israelis are marking the one-year anniversary since Hamas killed 1,200 people and seized hundreds of hostages.
Well, thousands of Israelis, it was a very sad mourning day, and thousands observed ceremonies, as you reported, in the Gaza border communities and at the Nova festival site, music festival site, at exactly 6:30 this morning, which is the time when Hamas gunmen invaded Israel from Gaza a year ago. And this was even as Hamas fired rockets into the Gaza border areas at exactly the same time, as if to make a statement to the Israelis that you may have weakened us during a year of war, but you haven't succeeded in destroying us. There were also hundreds of Israelis, hostage families and their supporters, who demonstrated in front of Prime Minister Netanyahu's house in Jerusalem to demand a ceasefire deal and hostage release.
But, Ricky, what do Israelis want to see happen, even as the war with Hamas continues?
Well, there was a poll actually released today by the Israel Democracy Institute that showed that a majority of Israelis support ending the war in order to release the hostages, that the hostage release is the top priority. This is the biggest majority, comes from leftist and centrist Israelis, but they are not in the governing coalition of Netanyahu, where more right-wing Israelis support continuing the war, and this, because they run the government, will probably set the priorities for policy in the future.
Ricky, we hope to see the hostages back home as soon as that is possible. Ricky, many thanks for your reporting.
Thank you.
Ricky Rosen reporting live for us from Tel Aviv, Israel. Turning now to the U.S. politics, with about a month to go until the presidential election, the Democratic and Republican presidential nominees will be busy this week. Former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are both scheduled to rally supporters in key states amid warnings that the rhetoric is becoming more inflammatory. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias has the details.
Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump was defiant Saturday while addressing his supporters at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. It was the same area where a shooter wounded him in July during an assassination attempt. He stressed that the incident, the first of two attempts on his life, only made him more determined to win the presidential election.
Over the past 8 years, those who want to stop us from achieving this future have slandered me, impeached me, indicted me, tried to throw me off the ballot, and who knows, maybe even tried to kill me.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, a Republican, was asked to comment on Trump's remarks and similar ones made over the weekend by the former president's son, Eric.
I don't think they're saying that the Democratic Party tried an assassination attempt. I think what they're alluding to is what we've all been saying. They have got to turn the rhetoric down.
Meanwhile, Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris has been juggling her duties as vice president with her campaign schedule. On Saturday, she was in North Carolina pledging federal support to communities affected by Hurricane Helene. A day earlier, Harris brought attention to the state of the presidential race.
This is going to be a very tight race until the very end.
Democratic Representative Adam Schiff was asked Sunday on NBC's Meet the Press whether he believes Harris and the Democrats can win overwhelmingly in November.
I think she can win overwhelmingly, given how divided the country is. Overwhelming may be winning by 100,000 votes or 80,000 votes in these key battleground states. Young people who were disengaged are now engaged, interested, active, volunteering. So I think we are well poised to win this thing, but it is still scary close.
The vice president will be busy with a series of media engagements this week, including appearances on popular talk shows her campaign announced. She's also expected to campaign in Nevada on Thursday and in Arizona on Friday. The Trump campaign website says the former president will travel to Pennsylvania on Wednesday to give remarks in Scranton and hold a rally that same day in the city of Reading. Veronica Valderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
Tunisians are awaiting the official results from Sunday's presidential election. Incumbent President Kais Saied is poised to win the poll with 89% of the vote, despite a low turnout according to exit polls after the voting closed. 3 years after Saied, 66, staged a sweeping power grab, rights groups are fear re-election is likely to further entrench his rule in the country, the only democracy to emerge from the Arab Spring uprisings. With the ouster of longtime dictator Zine El Abidine Ben Ali in 2011, Tunisia prided itself on being the birthplace of those regional revolts against authoritarians. But Tunisia's path changed dramatically soon after Saied's election in 2019. The Tunisian Electoral Board says only 28% of voters turned out to cast their ballots. For more on Tunisia's presidential elections, I'm joined live from here in Washington by Monji Dawadi, president of the Tunisian United Network. Monji, is anything likely to change if Saied, as expected, retains power for a second term?
Not really. I mean, the simple answer to that question, I think we're still waiting for the official results of the election to be announced. However, we do not expect to the announcement of Kais Saied as the winner of these elections. I think his second term will be marked by certain factors. For example, the more consolidation of power. We've seen this happening throughout his presidency. The Kais Saied wanted to be the only ruler, the only person who has power over Tunisians. He's going to continue that. He's going to continue to consolidate all his power in his own hands. Also, he will probably go after some of the factors and some of the key players who, quote unquote, annoyed him during this election season. Those who maybe were considered as a threat to his victory. And we saw how he used all tools, including the judiciary, to go after them, to fabricate cases against them, to imprison them, and to even try to deny them a place on the election ballots. Right. And even when the court stepped in and reinstated some of them, he ignored those court rules and continued his path.
So, Monji, are you referring to where he made remarks earlier saying, quote, "We are going to cleanse the country of all the corrupt and schemers"?
Exactly. This is very, very dangerous rhetoric. As you know, Kais Saied is somebody that played and presented himself to Tunisians as an outsider to the political scene, and so he always plays this role of coming from outside to cleanse the political scene, to cleanse Tunisia from these corrupt politicians and businessmen. And so that's going to continue. I mean, he always presented himself that way, and that resonated with a good segment of the Tunisian people. I mean, we saw that mostly Tunisians stayed home yesterday, did not vote. More than 70% did not cast their vote. But the 30% who went to the vote, most of them have probably, and as we will know shortly, voted for Kais Saied because that resonated with them, that image of him coming in to cleanse the country, and which is a very dangerous rhetoric, as we know. This could place Tunisia on a path of even internal strife, especially when he does not have any economic solutions to the country. Unemployment will continue to rise. Right. Tunisia will continue to face economic difficulties, and unfortunately.
Monji will be watching to see what happens in his second term. Monji Dawadi is president of the Tunisian United Network. Still to come, churches in Port Sudan become makeshift shelters. We'll be right back.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Mudu, in Washington every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
In other news, authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo say vaccinations against Mpox are underway nearly 2 months after the outbreak that spread from Congo to several African countries and beyond was declared a global emergency by the World Health Organization. The 265,000 doses donated to Congo by the European Union and the United States were rolled out in Goma on Saturday. The chief of Uganda's Defense Forces, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, has given U.S. Ambassador William Papp until Monday to apologize or leave the country. It is not clear why Kainerugaba, who is President Yoweri Museveni's son, issued the ultimatum to the ambassador, although this week the United States sanctioned 4 Ugandan police officers for human rights violations. And the United Nations Weather Agency is reporting that 2023 was the driest year in more than 30 years for the world's rivers, as the record hot year underpinned the drying up of water flows and contributed to prolonged droughts in many places. The World Meteorological Organization says glaciers that feed rivers suffered the largest loss of mass in the 50 years. In Port Sudan, which has been spared from the fighting in Sudan's civil war, many churches are now makeshift shelters for the country's 11 million displaced residents. Henry Wilkins visits one such church where a religious leader who is a displaced person himself does what he can to help with little support from the international community.
When Sudan's civil war started in April last year, those fleeing the fighting began arriving in the city of Port Sudan. The Church of the Virgin Mary opened its doors to the new arrivals. Basada Bushra Gorgeos is one of the priests at the church.
Our role as clergymen is to help others find housing, food, and water. We give psychological counseling and physical treatment as well. We try to find safe places for them to stay, whether here or outside Port Sudan.
Those who cannot afford to flee the country remain at the church, he says. According to UN figures, almost 11 million are now displaced as a result of Sudan's war. In Port Sudan and its surrounding region, 36,000 are forced to live in public buildings such as churches. Anna Simon Aziz Sadek arrived at the church 2 months ago with her young daughter. She says they were threatened and robbed by members of the paramilitary rapid support forces on their journey here, and that her daughter is traumatized as a result.
When we were coming here, the RSF were stopping cars. They pulled us out of our car and took our belongings. So she's still terrified after she witnessed the gunfire. Now, if she sees a group of strangers, she feels scared.
She says the church was a welcome respite.
Here, we found safety. The church welcomed us and asked us what we needed. We were tired when we came here, but they helped us.
Like Sadek, Gorgeos also found safety in Port Sudan. He was displaced after the church he worked at in another city was attacked by unidentified gunmen. He says the clergymen were deliberately targeted. The attackers knew their names, shot one person in the leg, and looted the building. When he arrived in Port Sudan in October 2023, the trauma weighed heavily on him, he says, but that drove him to help others with similar experiences.
As clergymen, it is a God-given duty and responsibility to serve others, even if we sacrifice our life to do it.
He says the church gets little assistance from the international community. The United Nations has complained about a 50% funding shortfall for Sudan's humanitarian crisis and restricted humanitarian access from the government, exacerbating the plight of Sudan's displaced. On September 25th, the US announced it would send a further $424 million in aid to the country. Henry Wilkins, VOA News, Port Sudan, Sudan.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.